Welcome back to Recovery Demystified. I'm so happy to have y'all here today. My name's Early. I'll be your host. I had a funny morning, you guys. Funny, not funny, haha, but like funny, what the fuck? And it reminded me again of that Buddhist teaching of groundlessness, where no matter how hard you try and how well you're doing, you can't stop the ground from moving beneath your feet. I got an email this morning that the therapist office where we have our support groups at is basically like condemned or has a bunch of water damage or something, and they need to do some ungodly amount of repairs, and instead of doing that, they're suddenly moving and there's no time frame and they don't know where they're moving. So yeah, the past 2 weeks we've been uprooted, first because of Labor Day and then because of this sudden need for repairs. And last week they didn't explain why, but I got a bad feeling and I was like, oh shit, we need to start looking for a new place to meet. And then this week I got the email that they're closing down, and I'm like, like I don't have a backup plan. And usually in my life I have a backup plan for my backup plan, a contingency for my contingency. So this one is like, oh crap. And we used to meet at the library, but they charge like $80 or something for having a meeting. And that's a nonprofit price, which I'm like, that's not really going to work either. So people of Fayetteville, if you know any like safe public meeting locations, something like a therapist office or the library where it's also free, but where we can have like a private little room to close ourselves into to have our support groups, I am now on the lookout for something like that. Maybe we can do like a Zoom until then, but I'm not very good at that kind of stuff. So yeah, just rolling with the punches here. And sometimes it's like Buddhism is kind of depressing, and sometimes it's like it just helps me understand the way of the world and accept it for what it is. But yeah, the idea that it's like, no matter what I do, I can't stop the ground from moving beneath my feet is just, that is true. That is some wisdom from Buddhism for you there. And then I went to turn on my computer to record this podcast episode, and I had a different audio project that I was like working on and editing about one of my friends that had died last year. I was gathering stories about him and editing them together to just make like, I'm not exactly sure where I was going with it, but just some kind of like memorial of quirky, funny, sweet stories about this person that was really special to a lot of us. And I opened up my computer to start recording this, and that whole project is disappeared. It's just not on here anymore. And I was in the process of editing that, and it was like a really sweet, cute thing. And I think it was an important part of my grief process to hear a lot of people's stories about this person who's really important to me. And it's gone. It's just gone. It just disappeared. And I can't really recreate it in the same way, because we were all like gathered at his house for the anniversary of his death, and we're recording the stories on the porch, and there's like crickets in the background. It was really sweet and beautiful. But yeah, you can't stop the ground from moving underneath your feet. I guess I could have like saved it while it was half done, but can't do that anymore. So yeah, a few different things happening this morning that just remind me that no matter what I do, life is going to keep on lifing. And the cool thing, didn't make me want to drink. That's pretty cool. And I'm not hungover, so I didn't have that extra added stress of trying to figure out how to deal with difficult situations while also being sick. So I'm grateful that I'm not hungover, and I'm grateful that I'm far enough into my recovery that every little stressful activity does not cause an impulse in me to want to drink. So here we are. Just gonna have to figure out how to solve these problems as they arise and do my best. And yeah, if anyone in the community knows a meeting space for us until Day by Day gets moved, please send me an email, info@recoverydemystified.com, and I'll try to get that figured out, because I hate to leave people hanging with the support group, because I mean, it's awesome. A lot of people depend on it, and it's a really special space and a special group of people that we've gathered up over the past 9 months. So sure would be great to be able to continue doing that for people without a really long pause. So I guess what I wanted to talk about today was something that I tried to record about like a month ago, but I wasn't in a super good headspace for it, but now I feel pretty good. So let's see what happens. Basically, in my addiction, I had 2 really specific psychological perspective changes that made it switch for me from quitting feeling impossible to quitting being possible. And I like to say a lot in our support groups that after whatever we're addicted to is physically detoxified from our body, that after that, the rest of the work is like between our ears. And that basically means like our beliefs, our thoughts, and how we understand ourselves and how we confront difficult situations like mentally in our lives. And I guess side note, I am sort of beginning to rethink that everything is in your head because, you know, I'm also always saying everything's connected, but I did just read a really good book about like nutrition and the body systems and how the body systems affect cravings and things of that nature. So the body and the mind are obviously connected, but we need to learn how to like confront our thought processes and address our belief systems and begin to understand ourselves better and explore and challenge ourselves in that realm in order to experience like true change and deep healing. So basically what I went through that allowed me to spark this change was in my worst times of my addiction, I felt worthless. I felt ashamed. I felt like I was just a loser. I thought my life was destined to be a tragedy. I thought it was my fate to just experience tons and tons of like pain and suffering until I died an untimely, sad, sick death of some sort. And I got this way after, you know, a decade of trying to quit drinking and failing. But really, I just like never had the proper resources to be able to achieve my goals of sobriety at that time. And as time went on, my addiction progressed, my behavior got worse and worse. And that caused people in my life to think less of me, obviously. And I don't blame anyone for that. Like addiction, there's a place for like compassion and a desire for healing for people with addiction, but also it is still important that people are held accountable for their bad behavior. Like having an addiction is not an excuse for bad behavior, but there's nuance and complexity and gray area thinking that we can use to understand that perhaps this person is not bad. They're a person who caused harm and like hurt people, as they say. So oftentimes we're like stuck in a cycle of abuse, and perhaps if that person was able to get the resources that they need to be in long-term recovery, then they would not act in these ways that hurt people anymore. But all that is to say that in the end of my addiction, I was acting extra bad and hurting people very deeply. And after I saw people slowly or quickly start to like leave my life and go no contact with me and just hear like through the grapevine about the social rejection that I was experiencing, eventually I started to internalize a belief about myself that I was bad and that I was a loser and that I was destined to live this life of tragedy and that I didn't deserve healing because I was bad. And unfortunately, this led to some suicidal situations because I was like, oh, the only way to prevent myself from continuing to hurt people is just to not be here anymore. And then I can't hurt anyone, which is terrible drunk logic because when a person kills himself, you're just basically guaranteed to hurt your loved ones forever with that choice. So poor drunk logic on my behalf. And it also led me to drink more. Like I was not motivated to quit drinking when I believed that I did not deserve to feel good. And that makes sense looking back. But at the time it was just like, I don't know, just this downward spiral that I was just slipping with. And now that I can reflect on it, I'm like, oh, of course, if someone believes that they're a piece of shit, like through and through, and they believe that they're worthless and they believe they don't deserve healing, that it makes a lot of sense that that person would not try to improve and that, in fact, they would get much worse, which is what I experienced. And at some point, I don't remember if it was a therapist or a podcast or a book or what, but I mean, I always went through these phases where like being fucked up and being strung out just got so painful, like physically and psychologically, that I would go through phases of quitting and starting and quitting and starting. And I would like think about the people that I'd hurt and be like, oh, they want me to quit. And then that's like fail and go through these phases of quitting, going back out, quitting, and going back out. But at some point, I wish I could remember exactly where I learned it from, but I guess it's not super relevant because you can learn it from me now here. I learned that if I started to believe that I was worthy of like life and love and happiness, like if I deserved that and I was worthy of it, then I would be able to have like at least some motivation or reason to do well for myself. So I definitely didn't believe that was true at first, but I pretended it was true. Maybe it was Brene Brown. I don't know. I quite enjoy her TED Talks about shame and guilt and the difference between the two. I'll put a link in the description for that. I haven't read any of her books, but yeah, those TED Talks back in the day definitely shook my world a little bit. But yeah, I decided that I deserved healing, which felt really weird because all I had done for the past several years was fuck up everyone else's lives. So the idea that I deserved healing was foreign, and it didn't make sense, and it didn't feel true at first. But eventually, as I just like fake it till I make it or whatever, I like embodied this concept of I deserve healing, I deserve healing, I deserve healing. Eventually, it started to feel that way. Like I would act in the way that someone would act if they felt that that was true. Like, okay, if I deserve healing, then I should drink water and eat breakfast. If I deserve healing, then I should do yoga. If I deserve healing, then I should go to the therapist twice a week. And eventually, by doing the actions of someone who felt that they deserved healing, I became someone who deserved healing. Like the actions sunk in. The result of doing healthy actions was a healthier body and a healthier brain. And instead of like spiraling down, 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 I started to very slowly spiral up. And it's interesting, like feeling uncomfortable, feeling well was like very true for me as well. Like I was so accustomed to feeling like shit and suffering and having people hate me that whenever people started to like see that I was doing well and start to come around again and talk to me, that it felt strange and like I didn't deserve it again. And it was really important for me just to like allow the healing to happen, even if it was uncomfortable, to feel sort of good. And it wasn't linear at all. Like I definitely like went back out a bunch, but the embodiment of the idea that I deserved healing was an absolute game changer for me. And that sort of blossomed later on into the ability to love myself, which also took a long time. And it felt like a big leap between like I deserve healing, which felt foreign and false at first, and then the growth into that experience by taking clear actions that a person who felt that they deserved healing would take, and then building upon that foundation, and then later taking actions that someone who would love themselves would take, even though I didn't love myself and I didn't believe that that was possible. I just kept taking little baby steps, acting in healthy ways, and the mental shift between feeling unworthy and unlovable to deciding that I was worthy and lovable was, I think, like the single most important thing that I did that made my recovery achievable. Because when I didn't believe it was possible and I didn't believe that I deserved it, I was just getting so much more out of control because I had no purpose. So that mental switch, I definitely invite everyone to just like try it on for size and know that it's not a switch that you can flip. It's not like you go from hating yourself to loving yourself, or from feeling unworthy to worthy just by making a decision that's true. It's like a thing you can get curious about and explore with yourself. It's a really good time to get out the journal and be like, what are my thought processes when I start to invite in the curiosity of what it might feel like if I decided I've deserved healing, or that I deserve love, self-love, and love from others, and write it down and see what comes out. And just try little tiny actions on for size. Like a person who loves himself would get out of bed. They would have a glass of water. They would eat something. They would go outside and go on a walk. They would call a friend. They would do a yoga video. They would pet their cat or their dog. A person who loves themselves would read a book. A person who loves themselves would dance in their kitchen to a song. You know, it doesn't have to be some like big dramatic ordeal or like some huge life change. Like pick one little thing. Like a person who loves himself would drink a glass of water and try it out and see where your thought processes go. See how it suits you. Be consistent with it and gentle with yourself, because Rome wasn't built in a day, girl, you know, and the little tiny shifts are going to build on themselves over time. And eventually you're going to look around and be like, whoa, like I'm feeling better. Like I feel better. And life's always challenging. Like we're never going to feel like 100% blissful all of the time. But these little changes are going to, if recovery feels impossible for you, these little changes are going to move you from impossible to possible. And the second mental shift that I made, besides deciding that I deserved healing and that I deserved self-love and love from others, was just what I was talking about a second ago, deciding that recovery is possible. Because when I felt like, y'all, I tried to quit drinking and drugs for 13 years, from when I was 18 to 31. And guess what? Eventually, when you fucking fail that many times, it might feel impossible. You might be like, oh, recovery is impossible for me. And if you look at like the official definition of like addiction or whatever, it's like a progressive, God, what is it? I should Google this. Hang on. Okay, the definition I was looking for is addiction is defined as a chronic relapsing disorder characterized by compulsive drug seeking despite adverse consequences. So when you hear that and you're like, oh, a chronic relapsing brain disease, that also makes you be like, oh, well, my experience is that I've been quitting drinking for 13 years and that it has been chronic and relapsing and my brain is fucking diseased. So this must be impossible, insurmountable. And that concept that like, oh, my life is destined to be tragic and whatever the fuck. Like when you read that definition, which by the way, I do not agree with whatsoever. When you read that, the addicted part of your brain is like, oh, cool. Chronic relapsing brain disease. Okay. Well, that means that I have like a free pass to just keep on doing this thing that I'm addicted to. And riddle me this. Why would someone who believes they have a chronic relapsing brain disease, who has experienced trying to quit and going back out over and over, why would they believe that recovery is possible for them? Right? Like it might seem impossible, and that would make sense. And for me, it seemed impossible because of the messages I was getting from society and because of my own experience at not being able to quit. But when I made the second important mental shift in my life and just decided that recovery was possible, and that's it, I just like opened the door for that to be a possibility in my life, that was a huge game changer too. Because if you take those two things, those two mental shifts and put them together, like either I felt like I didn't deserve recovery and recovery was impossible. Do you think that I can recover with those two concepts in mind? No, because I'm not even going to try if it's impossible and I don't deserve it. If I make those two mental switches, right, recovery is possible and I deserve recovery. I deserve self-love and love from others. If those things are both possible and I deserve them, that leads to curiosity, that leads to doors opening, that leads to possibility, and that leads to positive change. And it doesn't just shift the whole world and all of a sudden you decide those things and you're magically cured, but it switches it from being impossible to possible. And that is fucking huge. And that is going to allow you to begin to make those healthy small changes in your life that someone who believes they deserve recovery and that they believe recovery is possible would do for themselves. And those shifts in my life were like absolutely night and day, going from impossible to possible, going from unworthy to worthy and deserving. Those two things in my life, it just like supercharged my ability to recover. It motivated me. It gave me a chance. Like before, I didn't feel like I had a chance. And it gave me the like curiosity to try new things and to build on the skill set that I'd already had. Like I say I was quitting drinking and drugs for 13 years. And that is true. And during those bouts of like sobriety that I had during those 13 years, like I learned stuff. I learned yoga. I learned healthy eating. I learned social skills. I learned different things that I enjoyed doing that were healthy, that didn't have to do with partying. And when you have little bouts of sobriety or time off of drugs or whatever, and you go back out and use, it doesn't make those things you learned disappear, and it doesn't make that time go away. Sometimes people are like, oh, if I go back out and use, then I'm a loser, I'm a fuck up, like, oh, I don't deserve healing, it is impossible. And it makes sense to get in those thought spirals, but I just want to invite people to try it on for size, that if you have, like, say you didn't drink for 3 days and then you go back and drink again, those 3 days still exist for you. You are still sober for them and they don't disappear. And if you're one of those people that likes to count consecutive recovery time, like, go for it. But in my life, when I was trying to count consecutive recovery time, it felt super disempowering, because every time I had to set the clock back to day one, I was like, fuck, day one again. But it's never really day one when you've had some time under your belt. It's like if you had those 3 days of sobriety and then you drank on day 4, you know, you still were sober for 75% of the time, and that's still fucking awesome. You know, I don't know, the desire for perfection in that way is perhaps toxic and unachievable, especially at first, and especially in like really, really heavy addiction. And I just want everyone to like, y'all, let's celebrate our wins, you know, like, let's focus on our successes and try to build off of them, and journal about what we learned so we don't forget it, and just continue to grow over time. And yeah, don't lose hope, because no one's too far gone. Like, someday y'all will get my whole story on this podcast, and it was fucked and it was not cute. But if I can go from the place that I was at in my recovery to the place that I am at now, I promise you that you can do it. I fucking promise you that you can do it. In relation to both of those concepts, a lot of the times I like to talk about viewing our thoughts from our core self, and then seeing our thoughts as sort of separate from that. Like, the addictive voice is any thought that will result in a desire to use. And then we have things inside of us, like everyone has an inner critic. I'm sure you have a little mean little voice inside of you that says mean things to you. That's your inner critic. And then a lot of us, I think everyone probably has like a fearful voice that's afraid of change. So our brains really like to do the same things over and over. And when you try to start changing in your life, like, there are going to be thoughts that are like persuade you to try to not change because they are afraid of that change. And I really like to invite people to step back. And this is just a basic concept of meditation. I did not invent this. You step back into your core self, which this part of your like consciousness lives in the uniquely human part of your brain, which is in your prefrontal cortex. And all of these other like random thoughts that come up are different ways that the other parts of your brain, usually the more ancient parts, are trying to communicate with you. So yeah, the addicted voice and the inner critic and the fearful voice that's afraid of change are all kind of on a team together, and they all want you to continue to use. So a lot of times it will start, you know, with inner critic that's like, oh, you don't deserve change. You can't change. Look, you've tried before. You've tried before and you failed over and over. Why do you think you can change? And then the addicted voice latches onto that and is like, yeah, you can't change. It's impossible. Why don't you just drink instead? You know you wanna. And they're very persuasive. And until we can get to the point where we learn the skill of separating ourselves from them. We have one participant in our group that described it as spam callers. And I thought that that was really a cool way to look at it. Like whenever you get one of those like intrusive thoughts that is not aligned with your goals or morals, instead of like arguing with it or pushing it away or dismissing it or latching onto it or anything of the sort, you can like acknowledge it and be like, oh, this is like a spam caller calling to try to sell me something that I don't want, you know? So you can be like, oh, look, it's a spam caller. I don't want that. Oh, that's my inner critic insulting me. I don't really want that. Oh, that's my addicted voice trying to get me to drink. Like once we separate ourselves from it and we can view it from our core self, from that uniquely human part of our brain, see where these thoughts are coming from, recognize that they are trying their best to do their job in our brain, which is try to keep us alive. But oftentimes it's like maladaptive and like sort of twisted, but we love them for trying. But the important thing is this cognitive ability to separate ourselves from those insulting, hateful, difficult thoughts and thoughts of using, and just view them. Another meditative technique I've heard a lot is like viewing the thoughts like the clouds in the sky. You know, you can see them as a spam caller. You can see them like as clouds in the sky, like, oh, there goes a cloud that looks like an addictive thought. Oh, it's disappearing in the distance, you know. Oh, there goes an insult. Hello, inner critic cloud. There just dissipates and shifts into the distance. So it's like a bunch of different techniques to try to confront difficult thoughts like that. But yeah, it's like those stressful, difficult thoughts are not us. They're not us in our core self or our best self. And if we like try to shove them down, they're going to come back up. If we latch onto them, we all know how that's going to end. But the important thing is just like acknowledge them and let them go. And remember, what would someone who loves themselves do? And yeah, so I invite everyone to just try these thought processes on for size. Be curious, be gentle with yourself. But what would your life be like if you made the mental shift and you believed recovery was possible for you, and you believe that you deserve healing, self-love, love from others? How could your life change if you started to embody those concepts truly and take action to make them real in your life? And as always, everything that I say is invitations. They're just ideas, thoughts, and concepts. And if you hate what I have to say, then you should do whatever you want, because we're different from each other, and I love that. But yeah, if you're struggling today, I love you. I believe in you. I know you can do this. If I can do it, anyone can. Thanks for your time, everyone. May you be happy and free. Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Petet made our logo. Our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. Logan Bragg wrote our beautiful theme music. We are entirely supported by donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. Your tax-deductible donations can be made to our Venmo or to our PayPal at Recovery Demystified. May you be happy and free, dear listener.